The fog on Karanith was ancient. It flowed like breath across the ridged hills and spire-thorn valleys, never lifting, never parting, humming with a low resonance that only the moon's native mosses could truly understand. Inai lived above it, just barely, in a floating biodome clamped into the ridge wall like a silver barnacle. She was a botanist, though no one really called her that. No one spoke to her much. The station logs registered her as an observer and research technician. Her job was simple: record the blooming cycles of native plant species on Karanith's equator belt and transmit monthly reports to the planetary ecological database orbiting the primary world below. The silence suited her. Solitude wasn't loneliness, not really. She had the mosses, the whisper blooms, and the way the starlight made the fog shimmer like oil. What more did she need? Well, perhaps one thing. The mark. A thin, arcing crescent etched deep into the skin of her inner left wrist, black like onyx and perfectly smooth to the touch. She'd had it as long as she could remember. No scar tissue. No ink texture. Not even a faint fuzz of burned skin. It didn't glow. It didn't react to stimuli. It simply existed. Waiting. Once a year, always at the exact moment of the harvest fog, it pulsed. Once. Softly. Like a memory knocking from the other side of a wall. She never told anyone. Never asked. But it haunted her more than she liked to admit. On the 42nd day of her 3rd year on Karanith, the mark burned. Not pulsed. Not tingled. Burned. She dropped her observation tablet in shock, barely noticing when it cracked open on the mossy deck. The pain was brief, sharp as a laser point, and gone within seconds. She blinked, rubbed her wrist, and caught the faint sound of something unnatural slicing through the fog above. Something was falling. By the time she ran to the deck railing, the object had disappeared behind the distant ridges. But it had been a shuttle, or a pod, spiraling fire and light, streaking like a comet through the red-gold sky. She felt the impact even from here, dull and far away, but unmistakable. Inai hesitated. Then turned. She grabbed her oxygen pack, her scanner, and a thermal blanket, just in case. The fog would be thicker down below. She didn't care. Something inside her, the same something that whispered to her at night when the fog made the dome walls tremble, told her that this was different. It told her she needed to find whoever, or whatever, had fallen. The descent into the lower fog line was steep. Inai knew the terrain better than most, but even she nearly lost her footing twice on the ridge path. The fog pulsed around her, red today, signaling high biological activity, and she adjusted her breather accordingly. The scanner was going wild. It couldn't get a lock. Electromagnetic interference. Not unusual in this zone, but frustrating. The crash site revealed itself slowly, first as a metallic glint, then a jagged black shape half buried in moss and fanged roots. The small craft had folded in on itself like a dying flower, its wings crumpled, engine core ruptured but not exploded. Lucky. She approached cautiously. Then she heard it. A voice. Weak. Hoarse. Don't leave. Inai rushed forward, tearing aside the remaining hatch panel. Inside, tangled in emergency straps and debris, was a man. His face was bloodied, jaw dark with unshaven stubble, one eye nearly swollen shut. But he was alive. Barely. She reached for his hand to check for a pulse. His fingers twitched. That's when she saw it. The mark. Black crescent. Left wrist. Identical. Her breath caught in her throat. No. Not possible. You have it too, she whispered. His eye opened. Blurry. Searching. When it met hers, something in his expression cracked, like he was remembering something he hadn't thought of in years. He lifted his hand slowly, his thumb brushing across her wrist. His voice was rasped and trembling. I've seen you, in my dreams. He drifted in and out of consciousness on the way back up the ridge. Inai wrapped him in the thermal blanket and activated the assisted lift drone. He was heavy, but adrenaline had overridden all her usual caution. He needed help. And he was like her. More than like her. Connected. She didn't speak to him much as they climbed. Just watched him. The way his lips moved like he was whispering something. The way his fingers kept twitching toward his wrist. When they finally reached the dome, she settled him into the med pod, activated basic diagnostics, and watched the monitors blink to life. Vitals, stabilizing. Cognitive state, dream reactive. Memory strain, elevated. She frowned. That wasn't standard. Memory strain. The diagnostics were usually clinical to the point of uselessness. He stirred again. Where am I? He asked, voice rough. Karanith, she said softly, kneeling beside him. You crashed. I brought you here. He blinked. Karanith, he echoed. Right. Foggy moon. Supposed to avoid it. She half smiled. You didn't get the memo. Guess not. A pause. He looked down at his wrist. The mark, it burned. Before the crash. Inai's heart stilled. Mine too. They stared at each other for a long time. Finally, he said, I'm Talon. Inai. He smiled faintly. You're real. She wasn't sure why that made her eyes sting. The dreams began that night. Inai had dreamt before, of course. But these were different. In the dream, she was running, hand in hand with someone. Through a station with glass walls and curved lights. Alarms were blaring. The walls were cracking. Her chest was full of fear, and love. She turned to look at him. And it was him. Talon. Only not him. A version of him. Younger, maybe. His hair longer. His voice smoother. Don't stop, he was saying. Don't look back. We have to reach the pod. Then everything shattered. White light. Vacuum. Cold. She woke gasping. Talon was standing in the observation lounge, staring at the fog. He didn't turn when she approached. I saw you, he said quietly. In a station. We were running. The same dream. He looked at her. How? She touched the mark on her wrist. I think, we've known each other before. Days passed. The fog changed colors. Gold. Then lavender. Then back to red. Talon stayed in the dome. He said his shuttle wasn't worth salvaging. And anyway, the comm system was out of range. The planetary orbit was on the far side for another 2 weeks. So he stayed. He helped Inai catalog the blooming cycles. He asked about the mosses and the way they sang during light storms. She asked about the places he'd seen, old relay stations, derelict worlds, the comet cities drifting between twin stars. Every night, the dreams deepened. They kissed on the third night. A slow, tentative kiss that felt both brand new and achingly familiar. The mark on her wrist flared with warmth. Not pain. Something like recognition. You found me, she whispered. He held her close. I promised I would. It wasn't just a romantic fantasy. The memories were real. They came in flashes, moments. An old station, once called Arjun's Cradle. A catastrophe. A prototype jump gate. A failed escape. One of them died. And the other? They couldn't remember. But something about the mark, it was more than a reminder. It was a signal. They began searching the archives in Inai's lab. Digging through long-abandoned scientific logs, forgotten star charts, and biomodification theories. They discovered something terrifying. The mark wasn't natural. It was synthetic. But not recent. It had been coded, designed, to survive memory loss. To pulse at intervals when the bond between bearers drew near. A kind of emotional beacon. But the logs also included warnings. Warning: memory convergence beyond recommended threshold. Behavioral risk. Cognitive instability. And at the bottom: do not let both remember fully. One must forget. One must lose. The dreams turned darker. In one, Inai stood alone in a ruined garden. In another, she watched Talon fall through space, arms reaching for her as his oxygen drained. In the final dream, she stood before a mirror. But her reflection wasn't her. It was someone else. Someone who had loved Talon before. Someone who had died. When she awoke, she was crying. Talon sat beside her. "I think I know what we are," he said. She turned to him. "We're echoes," he said. "Reverberations of something the universe won't let die. Each life, we find each other. And each time, one of us has to lose the other." Inai didn't speak. "But not this time," he said fiercely. "This time, we hold on." She looked at the mark. It glowed faintly. A countdown. "What if the mark is a curse?" she whispered. "What if remembering is what breaks us?" He touched her face. "Then forget me, if you must. But I'll remember. Always." And he kissed her again, desperate, endless. That night, the fog outside turned white. Silent. Still. And Inai awoke alone. No note. No trace. Just a faint hum on her wrist, and the smell of moss, and the wind moaning through the glass like a broken song. She looked at the stars. Then at her reflection. And whispered. "Find me again." The city of Andra Vale was suspended over a sea of singing fog. The fog wasn't just mist. It was conscious, some said, filled with vibrations that pulsed up through the city's obsidian suspension routes and into the architecture itself. The streets hummed faintly. The windows shivered with sound. Entire structures vibrated in tune with the atmosphere, producing accidental melodies that came and went like birdsong. In Andra Vale, silence was a myth. And for Sylvan, silence was sacred. He was blind, not from birth, but from something that happened when he was 16, an accident no one talked about anymore. He remembered the color of light vaguely, like a taste. His world now was texture and sound. He lived in a narrow, ivy-choked house overlooking the Resonance River. And from that house, he composed music that even the fog seemed to pause and listen to. Sylvan didn't write notes on paper. He didn't need instruments. He used a modified frequency weaver, an old automaton made of brass and pearl glass, nearly as old as the city itself. He called it Marlowe. But lately, Marlowe had been broken. It groaned instead of singing. Stuttered when it tried to process his melodic commands. And worse, its internal pulse had changed. Off-key. Distorted. Like something inside it had forgotten the rhythm it used to know. Which, oddly enough, mirrored how Sylvan himself felt. He hadn't slept well in weeks. Not since the dream started. In the dreams, he stood in a garden of mirrored water. The trees had no leaves. The sky was purple, laced with silver veins. A woman stood beside him. He couldn't see her face, but he could feel her hand in his. They never spoke in the dreams. But he always woke up with music in his chest. A melody he'd never heard, but somehow knew. He tried composing it, but every time, Marlowe failed. As if the machine knew more than he did, and was resisting. That's when he decided to call a technician. It was a risk. The automaton was fragile. A modern tech might dismiss it as obsolete. He was ready to be laughed at. But when the knock came, it wasn't laughter that greeted him. It was her voice. Bright. Rough around the edges. Curious. You're Sylvan, right? I'm Kira. I heard you've got an old soul that needs tuning. Sylvan smiled without meaning to. That's one way to put it. She stepped inside like she belonged there. He could tell by the way her footsteps made no hesitation on the worn floorboards. Some people moved around blind people like ghosts. Kira didn't. She touched Marlowe gently, murmuring low compliments like it was a creature, not a machine. This thing's ancient, she said with something close to reverence. Where'd you find it? In a wrecked sky barge, he said. Was the only thing still humming. I dragged it out before the salvage crew stripped it. You have good instincts. She began work without further comment. The house filled with soft tool sounds, hisses of air, clicks of brass plates, the occasional chirp from Marlowe as it stirred. Sylvan sat in his usual chair, fingers tapping on the windowsill in time with the vibrations coming from the city. The fog outside was blue today, melancholy and deep. After a while, he asked, "Do you hear it too?" Kira didn't pause. The fog? No, the song. In the air. When the city breathes. She went quiet for a beat. Then, softly, I used to. A long time ago. Now it just feels familiar. Like something I forgot I knew. He smiled again. Same. By dusk, Marlowe hummed awake. It was subtle at first, just a gentle pulse, steady and even. Then came the flicker of light across its curved glass eye, and the way its tuning rod stretched like yawning limbs. Kira stepped back, watching it glow. I think it remembers, she whispered. You say that like it's alive, Sylvan said. She turned to him. Maybe it is. He reached out, fingers brushing the glass casing of Marlowe's side. It shivered at his touch. Then, slowly, played a single note. One note. The same note from his dreams. He went still. You heard that, right? He asked. Yeah, she said. What is it? He turned his head toward her. It's the song. The one I keep hearing in my sleep. Kira didn't respond. But she didn't need to. He could feel the silence stretch. The way her breath hitched. She'd heard it too. Over the next week, Kira came back every day. Sometimes to check on Marlowe. Sometimes to talk. They spoke of the fog, and the city, and the strange old harmonics that the builders of Andra Vale supposedly encoded into its foundations. They talked about music, and memory, and the way sound could sometimes carry something deeper than meaning, something like memory, but not. They never mentioned the dreams again. Until the morning he reached for a cup and accidentally brushed her wrist. The moment their skin met, the automaton glowed like a flare. Marlowe played 3 notes, soft, haunting. And Sylvan saw the dream again. Only this time, clearer. The garden. The woman's face. It was her. Kira. He dropped the cup. It shattered. She caught his arm. Sylvan. It's you, he said hoarsely. She stared at him. What? He reached for her hand, turning it over. On her wrist, half hidden beneath a grease smudge and a leather cuff. A black crescent. Identical to the mark on his own. No, she whispered, pulling back. That's not, I didn't. How long have you had it? He asked. She swallowed. Since I was 16. Right after, an accident. He nodded. Same. She backed away a step, breathing shallow. This can't be happening. But it is. He rose, stepping toward her, heart pounding. Do you dream of me? She blinked. Her voice cracked. Every night. They didn't touch again for 3 days. Not out of fear. but because touching made the memories stronger. Too strong. Each time they brushed skin to skin, Marlowe played fragments of the melody, echoes of something old and buried. And with each note, they remembered more. A station called Arjun's Cradle. A collapse. A promise made as one of them was dying. A vow to find each other again. No matter the life. No matter the cost. They had loved before. They had died before. And now, here they were. Again. I think the mark binds us, Sylvan said one night, sitting beside her on the roof. The fog drifted below, glowing violet. Kira stared up at the stars. It feels like a tether, she said. A promise I didn't know I made. He hesitated. Does it scare you? She looked at him. No, but it makes me ache. He knew what she meant. That strange sense of longing, not for something you lost, but something you almost remembered. A love too big for one life. He reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. The song came together slowly. Each note appeared only when they were close. The automaton responded to their connection, to the resonance between them. By the end of the second week, Marlowe played a full chorus. It was the saddest, most beautiful thing Sylvan had ever heard. And as it ended, he saw a life before this one. He was not blind then. She was not a mechanic. They were scientists. Lovers. Dreamers. Their love had rewritten data. Had changed outcomes. And it had been erased. On purpose. By someone. Or something. To keep the song from ever completing. If we finish it, Sylvan said one night, we'll remember everything. Is that good? She asked. He turned toward her. It has to be. She shook her head. What if remembering means we break again? Then we hold on tighter. He reached for her wrist. Their marks glowed. The automaton screamed. And the city went silent. It lasted only a moment. But in that moment, the hum of Andra Vale, eternal, ceaseless, stopped. And when it returned, something had changed. The buildings no longer hummed with chaos. The song was in tune. The city was singing the melody. Their melody. They spent the night composing. Tears running down their faces. Fingers moving in tandem across the weaver's keys. And as dawn touched the fog with pink gold, Marlowe released the final note. The mark on their wrists faded. Not vanished, just dimmed. Like it had fulfilled its purpose. So what now? Kira asked, her voice raw. Sylvan turned toward her. He smiled. Now we live the life we never got to finish. Nellier opened his eyes to vacuum. Or, nearly. The inside of his helmet was fogging with breath. The emergency suit's O2 meter blinked in angry red symbols he couldn't focus on. Pain speared through his ribs with every twitch. His body floated awkwardly in the broken capsule like a marionette with its strings cut. The last thing he remembered was the flash. The freighter he'd been on, Parallax Mercy, ripping open along its spine, a hull breach fast and violent. Then the escape pod's launch sequence had triggered automatically. Then blackness. Now, stars. Silent. Indifferent. Unreachable. He didn't know how long he drifted, but when the beacon finally chimed, soft, repetitive, not part of his own suit's alerts, his eyes closed from sheer relief. Salvagers. Please let them be real. She found him 22 minutes later. The suit's vitals were tanking. His body had lapsed into microsleep. His hand twitched once as her tether hooked around his wrist. She stabilized the pod with practiced precision and cracked the seal on the inner hatch. A breath of thin, sterilized air escaped. You're lucky, she muttered as she pulled him out. Most who get caught in the debris ring don't float long. She checked his suit for patches. Found 3. Burned clean through. Really lucky. She paused, brushing aside dust. And saw it. A black crescent, just above his wrist joint. Barely visible through a layer of dried blood and carbon scoring. Her heart skipped. She had the same mark. She always had. Nellier woke to amber light and the subtle sound of a ship engine purring like a living thing. The ceiling above him was curved steel, wrapped in netting and wires. He smelled sterilizers, heat, and faint grease. He turned his head and winced. "Careful," said a voice. A woman's. Firm, but not unkind. "You hit your head hard. Plus some cracked ribs. Your suit wasn't doing you many favors." He blinked. Tried to sit up. Regretted it instantly. She stepped into view. Tall. Cropped hair. Dark eyes with silver flecks. A small tattoo at her throat, faded with age. "I'm Emran," she said. "You're on the Wayfarer's Wish. Salvage your class." He took a shaky breath. "Nellier. I was on the Parallax Mercy." "It? Yeah. We caught the distress burst." He looked down. His wrist was bare now, the suit gone. And the mark was visible. Black. Crescent. Exactly like hers. He glanced up at her slowly. She didn't say anything. Just held up her own wrist. "I've had mine since I was 17, she said. "Didn't mean anything until I saw yours." They didn't talk about it for a while. She made soup. He drank half of it. She showed him the layout of her salvager, modular, beat up, full of mismatched parts that somehow worked in harmony. Her co-pilot was an old drone she'd reprogrammed to sing lullabies when the NAV system got too loud. The ship smelled like stories. He liked that. She said she'd been alone for 2 years. Used to have a partner. Not that kind, she clarified. More like a brother. We disagreed on where to go next. He chose the rim. I stayed near the moons. "Why here?" he asked. She looked out the viewport at the shimmer of the debris ring. "Because this is where things are forgotten." He didn't press. But he understood. That night, Nellier dreamed. He was underwater, no, not water. Fog. Thick, slow-moving fog that filled a hallway of glass. He walked barefoot, his skin cold. Someone was ahead of him. A figure. She turned. It was Emran. Only not her. Younger. Laughing. "You always find me late," she said in the dream. He reached for her hand, and woke up. Chest pounding. Beside him, the ship's lights pulsed gently. He sat up. And saw her sitting at the main console, turning something over in her hands. A piece of glass. Shaped like a crescent. She didn't notice him right away. When she did, she didn't look surprised. "I used to dream of you," she said softly. "Before I knew your face." He stepped closer. "Me too." She met his eyes. "Do you remember anything?" He nodded slowly. "Only feelings. Not moments." "Same." He pointed at the glass. "What's that?" "Something I found in a wreck 2 years ago. Had no idea what it meant until now." He took it from her. Held it up to the light. It shimmered faintly. The shape of their marks, only in 3 dimensions. It vibrated slightly in his hand. "It's a key," he said, without knowing why. She looked at him sharply. Then smiled. "I think you're right." The next day, they found the wreck. A derelict station, half buried in a minor moon's gravity well. No name, no record. Just a slowly spinning structure surrounded by broken satellites and decayed cargo modules. Nellier felt his heart ache the moment they approached. I've been here, he said. Me too, Emran whispered. They docked at the side port. The air was stale but breathable. Inside, the station was a grave. Hollow halls. Curved walls of reflective glass. Dust motes frozen in starlight. And at the center, a locked room. Crescent-shaped indentation on the panel. Nellier took the shard of glass. Pressed it in. The door hissed. Opened. They stepped inside together. It wasn't a control room. It was a memorial. Screens lined the walls, flickering through old logs, broken audio, static-filled video. They saw themselves. Not as they were, but younger. He was an engineer. She was a data weaver. They were lovers. Dreamers. They had discovered a pattern in gravitational echoes, something impossible. Something beautiful. And someone had tried to erase it. The logs ended in screams. Static. Then silence. But the last image froze on screen. Them. Holding hands. Marks glowing. A message below it. One day, we'll find our way back. Follow the song. Nellier looked at her. Emran was crying. He stepped closer. Took her face in his hands. We made it. She nodded, laughing through tears. We did. They kissed there, in the room where they had once died. And the mark on their wrists faded to silver. Not gone. Just quiet. Like a song remembered. Avon never believed in fate. Not in the traditional sense. He was a historian of the stars, trained in the factual dissection of time, of orbit patterns, of ancient transmissions, of civilizations long turned to dust. His days were spent inside the Whisper Vault, a research station that hung in geosynchronous orbit around the fading star Illis 5. There, he studied fragments of light older than memory. Messages encoded in starlight. Patterns inscribed into flare signatures. Some dismissed it as academic poetry. But he knew better. The stars spoke. You just had to know how to listen. The Whisper Vault's outer ring was lined with observational chambers, each one tuned to a different century's echo. Avon lived in the oldest one, where data washed through the walls like slow tides. Some researchers hated that section. Too much silence. Too little clarity. But he felt calm there. Until the morning the stars wrote her name. He didn't know it was a name at first. Just a pattern in the flare bursts, a repeating phrase, looped across 3 constellations. SOLRI. He'd seen ancient star scripts before, but this one wasn't in any known language. It was smoother. Almost, melodic. He whispered it once. Solari. And the mark on his wrist flared. The mark had always been there. A soft black crescent on his inner arm, almost invisible unless the light caught it right. He dismissed it as a birthmark. Or a minor burn from his youth. It didn't do anything. Until now. Until he said her name. He called the linguistics branch. Requested an expert in script correlation. He didn't expect anyone to come in person, most preferred to work remotely. But the next morning, she arrived. You're Avon? She asked, stepping into the vault's light. He turned. And forgot how to speak. She was tall, wrapped in a loose copperweave cloak that shimmered faintly when she moved. Her eyes were dusk-colored. Her presence was warm, like sunlight on skin. I'm Solari, she said with a small smile. You said you had something for me. His mouth went dry. Solari. Her smile faded, just slightly. Yes. He turned away, his pulse hammering. Nothing. I mean, yes. The message. From the flares. He showed her the data. She stared at the scrolling symbols, then leaned closer. This is impossible, she murmured. This script isn't from this sector. Not even this quadrant. I've only seen it once before. Where? He asked. She hesitated. Then pulled back her sleeve. The same mark. Crescent black. His eyes widened. You too. Since I was 19, she said. It started burning the day I joined the archivists. He looked down at his own mark. Mine burned this morning. When I saw your name in the stars. They stood in silence. And something between them clicked into place. Over the next week, they worked side by side. Avon decoded the message structure, Solari interpreted the star language. The flares weren't just spelling her name. They were forming a map. Not physical. Emotional. Each starburst encoded a memory. One they shared. Even if they didn't remember it yet. She would translate, and he would feel it, a pulse through his skin, like a song half-sung. They saw fragments in the data. A dance beneath a red sun. A kiss beside a frozen waterfall on a moon that no longer existed. A promise made in the dark between stars. And always, the mark glowing. We've done this before, Solari said one evening, sitting with him beneath the dome of the observatory. Avon nodded. The stars keep records. Even of love. She turned to him. Do you believe that now? In fate? He looked at her. I believe in you. She didn't speak. But she reached for his hand. Their fingers intertwined. The mark pulsed. And in the moment of contact, they both remembered. It wasn't a full memory, more like a flood of feelings. They were aboard a seed ship once, carrying the last of a dying planet's knowledge. A digital ark. They were co-pilots. Partners. Lovers. The mission failed. Sabotage. They died holding hands as the stars took them. But before the end, she encoded their bond into the stellar archive, a secret love note written in the flares of stars. A message only they would be able to decode. If they ever returned. If time bent in just the right way. We left it for ourselves, Avon whispered. She nodded, tears in her eyes. We wanted to find our way back. He kissed her then, quiet, reverent. Not new. Remembered. They finished the translation 3 nights later. The last flare revealed a location, an uncharted system, dead in the records, marked only by a drifting phrase. Where memory becomes light. They looked at each other. We should go, Solari said. Will they let us? She grinned. I'm the best archivist they have. They won't stop me. He laughed. I never said I'd be able to stop myself either. They left the whisper vault behind. The system was empty. Silent. Until they reached the core. There, suspended in orbit around a dead planet, was a crystalline structure, small, flickering, pulsing. Inside, a message. An echo. Of them. 2 voices, layered in harmony. We loved once, across light years. We love again, in this one. When you find this, remember. We are always one. The structure dissolved after playback. And their marks faded, at last. Not in loss. But in fulfillment. What do we do now? Solari asked softly. Avon smiled. We live. In the now. For the first time. She nodded. Took his hand. And for once, there were no more flares. Only peace.